Welcome to another live edition of Blacklisted Radio. It's good to be back. It is the 28th day of October 2018. We are live. I'm your host, Doug Owen. And you can be part of this show. We call it Blacklisted Radio. Our website dedicated to this show is blacklistedradio.com. You can join me, some of the fellow travelers, trolls, a lively group of people there at blacklistedradio.com. Accoutrements free on the house. Lots of ways to be part of it. You can text the show, 512-222-3067. Don't worry if you forget the number. It's on the website. Most of you listening to the show are listening via the internet, so it's the portal. It's the home. I'm the senior editor of blacklistednews.com. It's the website that we curate all sorts of news and nuggets, interesting items that we bring to the show here each and every Sunday evening, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can join us telephonically. You can call Ken there across the glass, the producer, and myself at 800-313-9443 via the mothership, Republic Broadcasting. So much to get to. I mean, there's so many different narratives, so many different takeaways. The mainstream media is it's in it's just in this constant state of derangement, and it's making people crazy. We have right here where I live locally, I mean, obviously we're dealing with a water crisis. People are drinking the FEMA water. water. I wouldn't buy one of the, I guess, the water locations where you can pick it up, one of the many places around Austin, Texas. We have poisoned water. One of the big memes is that, you know, there's a lot of people that don't want people to move here, especially from California, because, of course, they bring their politics and they make the prices of homes here even more outrageous than they already were. So that's been happening for a long time. We have a populace right around 2 million people. So, I mean, that's huge. And we get our water from the Highland Lakes system. Now, it's not quite the situation that you have in not just Flint, Michigan, but thousands of water systems across this nation that are tainted with lead. But we do have a silt problem. The filters that filter the water from the lakes and provide all of the potable water that is used by the citizenry around Austin, Texas, comes from this kind of antiquated and outdated water system that has a big problem, and that's silt. Now, what's not really talked about is the root cause of this silt, and it was just a few years ago, not to mention that we received 11 inches of rain in one night, and it's been pretty chaotic, the flooding, and we had a big bridge go down, so it's always funny, you know, when you have your friends and family that are from outside of town, and they're like, "Are you okay? Are you okay? We've heard about the flooding. Are you washing away there?" Not quite. It's not like Houston or some of these other low-lying areas, but there's plenty of devastation. And if you owned a lake home on Lake LBJ or any of those other areas, you probably had one of your boat docks ripped off, or you lost some jet skis. A lot of just so many jet skis that went floating by. It was pretty surreal. And the whole lake system that's here that we enjoy was built in the 1950s by LBJ, or maybe it was the early 60s. And then this new governmental entity, the Lower Colorado River Association, the LCRA, bunch of gun-toting thugs took over the river system here. So, and today, we have this lake system that's, I mean, relatively new. It's, you know, only 60 years maybe old, somewhere in that area. And so, you know, unprecedented raining. Of course, people are talking about El Nino. El Nino is back. It's making it very wet. It has been pretty torrential here. But, you know, we had a lot of grass, and people hate grass. It gets caught in the props of their boats, and it's just kind of nasty, you know. And so there was a lot of lake grass, for lack of a more better term for it, that hydrilla is the technical term, I guess. Lots of hydrilla and various forms of lake grass that were, you know, pretty thick. Well, people enjoy the lakes, and it was kind of becoming a problem. We have other problems like zebra mussels, which I don't know. I don't think it's really that much of a problem. But so the geniuses in the Parks and Wildlife department there at the LCRA came up with this great plan. They're going to release these grass-eating carp. Well, this is man's intervention. This is where we try to fight nature. We try to fix things. And I hear all of these, ideas from spraying all sorts of reflective material into the skies and weather modification, trying to control the temperature of the earth. It points me right back to this case in point example of where really smart, well-intentioned people came up with a really, really bad idea. So they released all these carp, and the carp ate the grass. They not only ate the grass, they continued, and they started eating other fish to the point where it's depleted almost all of the grass in the Highland Lake system, especially in Lake Austin, Lake LBJ. And so it's nice because there's no grass there. But since there's no grass, there's no cover, it's killing the natural wildlife and the natural filtering system, which is the grass that protected all of these vents from dragging silt into the pumps and the wells and the water treatment facility. So they got a silt problem because they had the grass problem, and they decided to use a carp that was overly aggressive, multiplied much faster than they estimated. It's almost like a mini version of Jurassic Park. All of the well-intentioned bad things that came out of this. So people have been drinking bottled water, and the memes to get the people out of to stop moving here is, please go away. The water is poisoned. Go back to California. Take your politics. Things are heating up in the midterm election, and of course, just in time, we have many crises and situations around the world. The Khashoggi assassination continues to have shockwaves throughout the world. His kids were barred from leaving, but apparently his family has been able to escape the hand of the young prince. That goes on. Of course, Turkey wants to extradite the murderers. Saudi Arabia saying not so quick. And we found more gruesome details. Obviously, the blood is all over the hands of the Saudi Arabians. And anybody at this point that doesn't think that this is just really, a pathetic assassination attempt. Now, Donald Trump said it was the worst cover-up of cover-ups. And Donald Trump is a man that probably knows about a few cover-ups. I've already mentioned the fact that he probably knows where Jimmy Hoffa's body's buried. But old Horseface, as he calls her, Stephanie Clifford, a.k.a. porn actress. What was her name? I can't remember her real name. I forget what her... Stormy Daniels. There you go. Stormy Daniels. That kind of cover-up. He's tried to cover up some things. Hasn't worked out so well for Trump in that arena, but he continues to tweet, horseface, other things like that. The Twitter sphere keeps the mainstream media, just infuriated and targeted solely on anything that Donald Trump does. Really anything that happens that is negative falls on the hands of Donald Trump and the mainstream media. Of course, the latest, we have Cesar Sayoc. He is the ex-stripper, man who hates Donald Trump, but the mainstream media is reporting that he loves Donald Trump. Of course, you can take whatever you want away from this, but the overwhelming majority of people, Jeff Johnson, most of the ex-CIA pundits that you hear on the mainstream media are saying that this is because Donald Trump's rhetoric is infuriating the people on the left, as to say that maybe he's on the left, and it really doesn't matter to this radio host / news man, quite honestly, his political leanings. all of the forensic analysis of these really, almost it seemed intentionally discovered devices that, of course, did not work, could not work. As soon as we started seeing the pictures of the pipe bombs with wires coming out of both sides and, just the silliness. Actually, 4chan, which puts out some pretty good memeage, has a huge user base that came up with all the, fake bomb devices that people could put together that was pretty comical. All of them returned addressed to one of our favorite people on the show, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. What happened to the Imran brothers? It doesn't matter. Debbie is a high criminal on so many accounts. And, people were not impressed with what Donald Trump had to say about the horrific attempted bombings that were targeted at people from George Soros, John Brennan at CNN, though he works at MSNBC. It's amazing that they got as far as they did. But now you have Caesar Sayoc. Interesting guy. And, the fact that he's an ex-stripper and he just looks like kind of a madman. The pictures of him, of course, make him almost look like a gangbanger. But Kurt Nimmo did some research, brought an interesting connection. People were wondering, obviously, the political implications and the possible political, I would say, theater, the migrant caravan, not to mention these bombings. Cui bono benefits from this? Obviously, I don't think it would be the Republicans that would benefit from this. If anything, it would make them look like there's more right-wing terrorists that are being, ignored. If you are a fan of the left, you note all the right-wing terrorists, the Nazis, the fascists, and if you're on the right, you look at Antifa, you look at all of the mobbings, the people like Maxine Waters, who has called for people to, and Hillary Clinton, sort of saying that people need to be uncivil. If you listen to her in context, it wasn't quite that. It's kind of like, you listen to a clip of Alex Jones, and before you know it, you find that he's calling for violence. But if you listen to it in context, you're like, well, no. He's just being a little hyperbolic and not even that, risque when it comes to it. But anyway, a lot of people on the internet, including myself, look at the timing, look at the politicization, look at how this has become a political football, and you have questions. Kurt Nimmo notes Caesar Sayoc's CIA connection. A post at Investment Watch reveals the non-bomber Caesar Sayoc boasted of his connection to a particularly loathsome CIA agent, Enrique Prado. Sayoc's social media accounts have now been expunged from the net, but early yesterday morning, an enterprising netizen managed to take a screenshot of Sayoc's 2016 post. Writes Dr. Owen. Prado worked with Coffer Black. Some of you know who I'm talking about. A former CIA high-level official who became the vice chairman of Blackwater USA. According to Evan Wright, Prado oversaw the CIA's assassination program and continued the effort when he followed Black to the notorious murder-for-hire group. Prado also worked with the thuggish Contras known for executing school teachers in Nicaragua. So a really interesting post. It's at the top of blacklistednews.com right now as we speak. And you can easily find it. Kurt Nimmo's blog, another dayintheempire.com or kurtnimmo.blog, I think. If you just Google it, you'll find the piece. And it just begs more questions about this. Of course, the timing. Is this another guy from Central Casting that has come from the deep state to create headlines, to create this? A lot of hate for Donald Trump. All of this is being blamed on Donald Trump. So that is a great way to get the left. If you look at the polling, they're not doing as well. Beto O'Rourke, the Beto Files, not coming through. Tell you what, though, the people that vote for Beto are so much more crunchy and and proud. Like, I don't see a lot of people wearing Ted Cruz stuff. I see tons of Beto stuff, not so much Ted Cruz stuff. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have people. That's not going to a win. Saw a lot more Ron Paul stuff than I did a lot of other Republican candidates in the 2012? Was it 2008? May have been 2012. His campaign there. So anyway, don't know if the progressives will be able to get Ted Cruz out of here. Donald Trump, of course, had to come to the great state of Texas to talk about this. The immigrant caravan is moving at epic pace. Now, the one thing that I have a lot of questions about is, how many people are here? You're hearing, from 7,000 to 17,000 people are making their way right on time, right on schedule to hit here during the midterm elections. Now, if you're a Republican, this is probably a good thing because it's going to get people voting and very interested in border issues, and that's why you were elected in 2016. So I think that, if you look at if this is a staged, I mean, the UN is, which is a globalist organization that Donald Trump has called out as such and talked about, it got a lot of heat for his renewed love and new moniker for Donald Trump, and that is a nationalist. Now, there are people that try to take nationalist and turn it into white nationalist, and all of a sudden, if you just happen to be a white person who's a nationalist, white nationalism, that is, akin to Nazism. You might as well hate the Jews, and you're probably excited about the synagogue shooting that happened today. That's what people really on the left think, and it's pretty amazing to me, considering the concessions that Donald Trump and I would say the majority of his fundamentalist support is from, the Zionist lobby itself. They love Donald Trump. I mean, he moved the embassy to Jerusalem. He has always supported wholeheartedly the Jewish state of Israel. He's made many concessions. And many people in the Trump cabinet are the exact neoconservatives that were there during the Bush era. So when it comes to Middle Eastern foreign policy, there is a huge representation of Israel on the table. Now, things like Saudi Arabia and the Khashoggi killing have complicated, have definitely stymied relations with the kingdom. Interesting piece came out today, definitely worth talking about. This came out of the Express UK, which is a mainstream media publisher, but they do put out they're between the BBC and the Daily Mail. That's the best way I can describe it. They're somewhere. The Daily Mail does a lot of great reporting. So does the National Enquirer. They just report a lot on people's boob jobs and other celebrity culture stuff that it's tabloid-ish. But they do have good writing. They pay their writers well. Murdered journalist Jamal Khashoggi, and I love listening to all the different pronunciations of Khashoggi. Khashoggi. People just depends on what. But anyway, their revelation, not about 9/11 like we talked about last week, was that he was going to disclose details of Saudi Arabia's use of chemical weapons in Yemen, sources close to him said. Interesting take. It's not a surprise, though, quite frankly. We'll be back on the other side. Your calls are welcome. 800-313-9443. It's Blacklisted Radio. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back. It's Blacklisted Radio. These exploitations of the Pittsburgh attack deride its victims. Headline at moonofalabama.org. Great website. Somewhat left-leaning, but always thoughtful. Lots of great analysis of the war, what's happening in Syria, and very insightful piece. from it. Yesterday's terror attack on a synagogue in Pittsburgh was committed by a man with extremely anti-Jewish and anti-immigration views. It is a third attack on a house of worship in 3 years. Like the earlier incidents, it is a heinous crime for enormous reasons, but there is little sound reason to blame the incident on Donald Trump. It does not justify to falsely claim increased anti-Semitism to exploit it for racist-driven colonial causes makes a mockery of its victims. And that's what the mainstream media is doing. A man armed with an AR-15 style assault rifle and at least 3 handguns, a man shouting anti-Semitic slurs, opened fire inside a Pittsburgh synagogue Saturday morning, killing at least 11 congregants and wounding 4 police officers and 2 others, the authorities said. Of course, is it a domestic terrorist? That becomes a political football. Interestingly enough, the Department of Homeland Security had ran safety drills at the Tree of Life Synagogue. Are we going into a break, Ken? Or is the machine breaking up here? Turn that bumper machine. Is the automation going wild on us or what?
I think I bumped the fader.
Damn you.
From the end.
Okay. So anyway, this came from Critagon. What was Bowers' work history? I can only find one reference to him working as a truck driver. Bowers told Mr. Hall's fiancée that he worked as a trucker. The synagogue's former president, Michael Eisenberg, said that while he was president, he had the Department of Homeland Security come to the Tree of Life. Eisenberg told the Post-Gazette the agency ran safety drills. Eisenberg added, quote, "We had to step up it as far as security, although there had been no threats." And, of course, the U.S. government, FEMA, I think it was, the Department of Homeland Security, gave money to a lot of these synagogues to beef up security in New York City and other major metropolitan areas. So anyway, just kind of an interesting nugget. The Department of Homeland Security helped them beef up security. And, there's not much to say about that other than maybe somewhat ineffective. Some of you may say too soon, Doug, too soon. Interestingly enough, going back to Kurt Nimmo, who's been busy over the weekend writing good stuff, murder in Pittsburgh and the targeting of an alternative social media platform. Robert Bowers, a suspected shooter at the synagogue in Pittsburgh, is being used to denounce the social media not on the corporate reservation. Bowers had an account on Gab, the free speech social media alternative to Twitter and Facebook, where he posted his anti-Semitic content. And this is now being used to portray the site as a haven for anti-Semites. So they had a response, GabAI.com. I don't believe this will work. Gab, often described as a refuge for alt-righters bounced from the corporate government social media, is targeted for destruction. Soon after Gab launched in 2016, the corporate media piled on, describing the site as an echo chamber for the alt-righters, who are, according to the propaganda media, white supremacists and Nazis, down to the man and woman. Gab's appeal to the crowd is obvious, writes Wired, a Condé Nast publication. The only posting guidelines are no illegal porn, no threats of violence, no terrorism, and no doxing. Oh, and the fifth commandment that literally says, try to be nice. Everything else is fair game. Notably absent any explicit stipulations against hate speech. So, if you want to be racist, and, a lot of people are, that's fine. In my world, I think that you have to have a haven for unpopular thought. It's unpopular to think that some people are better than others, or that some people's life means less. Know a whole lot of Israelis that feel that about Palestinians. I know a whole lot of Saudi Arabians that probably feel that about the Iranians. I know a lot of Japanese people that feel that about the Chinese, and probably vice versa. Lots of people don't like each other, and there's thousands of years of history that lead into this, and you're always going to have cultural differences. And if the internet is a way for people to communicate, you're going to have people that say things that you don't like. And so PayPal, I think Stripe, some other money companies have now abandoned Gab. And, I actually have an account, but it doesn't allow RSS to be fed into it. So I haven't paid much attention. I do get emails that people are following me, but I'm just not a gabber on social media. I automate some tweets when this show goes out. There's very limited socialing I do. But anyway, of course, using this as an excuse to get rid of other options out there available to you that are outside of the walled garden, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and the other approved social media outlets here on the reservation. Anyway, guys, quick break. Back on the other side. It's Blacklisted Radio. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back. It's Blacklisted Radio. A lot to talk about. Man arrested while attempting to destroy the Magna Carta. This is one of these stories. I'm like, what? Really? Okay. I guess, there's somebody out there that thinks that is an appropriate thing to do. Don't worry. The neoconservatives, the other people in the House of Commons and the Parliament over there across the pond, the representatives, and of course all the people in Brussels that run the economies. I mean, people are begging to have the people in Brussels run their country from afar when it comes to Brexit. We need another vote. We don't want to control our own destiny. We don't want to make our own laws. We want to be part of your EU super system. I don't know. I kind of get it. People in Texas like to be part of the union. We were once a state. Guess that, there's benefits, but they don't come without strings. They don't come without income tax and all the other machinations of the 20th century. Anyway, man arrested while attempting to destroy the Magna Carta. The Salisbury Journal's Rebecca Hudson reports that a 45-year-old man was arrested today after smashing the case of the Magna Carta with a hammer and trying to destroy it. A spokesman for Salisbury Cathedral said, quote, "We can confirm that at the end of the afternoon yesterday, a man attempted to break into the case which houses the Magna Carta in the cathedral's chapter house. He was arrested by police shortly afterwards and taken into custody. We're very relieved that no one was hurt during the incident and that the Magna Carta itself is undamaged." Now, I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense to me. Burn the Constitution. You don't have to do it. People... there are many governments that were formed out of the Magna Carta that pay almost no attention to it. I mean, there's a lot of people in this country, some of you listening to this show, that would be happy if Donald Trump, once again, we're in a martial law, national security emergency, so the Constitution is kind of null and void, but there was this thing called posse comitatus, where the government, or at least the people that created our republic, thought it may be a bad idea to allow for a standing army within the United States because it could be turned upon its own citizenry, and it was just a bad look, and there should be some divisions in a free society. So they said, hey, we shouldn't bring troops to the countryside, and I still agree with that wholeheartedly, philosophically, but there's that immigrant caravan people want, and Donald Trump will be sending, according to his latest, which I don't doubt, but his latest declaration, 800 standing troops to the U.S. border. And a lot of people don't, see the implications there and don't think it's a big deal and probably think it's a justification because we have this huge immigrant caravan of people, nor-do-wells, that have turned down job offers. The Mexican government and all these other governments that are on the U.S. dole have tried to make concessions, but I just don't see them. I see the trash that they've left. I see like these closed box shots with Univision that show a few of them here. I see some pictures that look like they could be from almost anywhere, of long, long, long lines. 17,000 people apparently are making their way here. I don't know where they're all pooping. I don't know how they're all being fed, but there is a massaging, and I think that it is so unorganic. And now there are reports that I was hearing today that it's from the Venezuelans. This is the Venezuelan vengeance for, of course, the sanctions that we have put on them. They've now released their official cryptocurrency. It's kind of a last-ditch effort to try to, bypass U.S. and other EU sanctions and, be able to operate on their cryptocurrency. So I don't know if that's going to work. I have my I have my reservations about how well that will work out for them. But same thing for the guy that tried to break the Magna Carta. All right, there's been so much talk, and I talked about it a little bit earlier, about this perceived division. And the people that are watching the mainstream media and following it maybe a little too much, or maybe believe that there are these huge divisions between cultures and races and people of this country. And I'm sure there's a lot of, anti-Semites and people that, don't like white people and people that don't like this color person or that color person. I mean, that's real. But at the end of the day, that's not really a problem that government can fix, quite honestly. You're not going to fix the way people feel because, quite honestly, if you believe that, if you make broad generalizations, I think in most cases are not receptive to looking at the bigger picture, or you're not interested in other viewpoints that may change your viewpoint. Just, and I'm sure I have some of those myself, things that I won't change. But I digress. I'm off in the weeds here. So you keep hearing about, well, it's the mainstream media, it's the people, it's the alt-right, all of these different groups. And of course it's Donald Trump, which, I've said it 1,000 times, and I'll say it 1,000 times more. I'm not the biggest Donald Trump fan. I still think that he's better than Hillary Clinton, and probably less culpable in murder and high crimes of government. I think he's a shady businessman that's taken money and opportunities that have not always been of the highest moral caliber. Sure, I do. He owned a lot of Atlantic City. Is that, but I'm not looking for morality in Donald Trump, and anybody that is, I don't know. I don't know what you want out of a president. He's not a king. He's not a father figure to my children, and that's not what I expect. And I don't want somebody that's well-spoken. I'd like somebody that had a clear path to what he wanted to accomplish, much of which Donald Trump has tried his best. I don't know if there's going to be any opposition to his 800-man military march. You saw each and every judge saying it was illegal for them, the Department of Homeland Security, the Immigration Department, to target certain countries for extended evaluations of visas and the like, and doing a little bit more background research when you're in that limbo, that Tom Hanks airport movie type limbo when you're trying to come to this country. Anyway, mainstream media outlet publishes Trump assassination story. I mean, it just blows me away. While the mainstream media outlets talk and balk at the suggestion that they may have been guilty of ramping up the division and political tensions in the United States. I mean, quite honestly, I think solely, one of those outlets actually published an assassination story about Donald Trump. Now, just try to put Barack Obama or any other person that you want, any other political figure in here, and think about the reaction that would happen. But, you have the left saying, when they go low, you kick them in the balls. When they go low, you poop in their face, or whatever their, Eric Holder's one of the recipients of a fake bomb from a guy that was deeply involved with a CIA operative. Make of that what you will. It's just the facts, people. I don't make up the story here. I don't make up the narrative. People are like, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. Not really. I just, I find other interesting counterpoints valuable to the grander situation because, quite honestly, most news is, at best, biased. At best, it's biased. At worst, it's paid for by the Department of the Ministry of Truth, the Department of Media, which will probably exist pretty shortly. Frustrated by the failure of the Mueller investigation to turn up the requested dirt on their enemy. Yeah, that's gone quiet, hasn't it? I haven't heard much about Mueller lately. I don't know if they're still investigating. I haven't kept up with it, I guess. Shame on me for being disinterested. I mean, it happens to me too, people. I follow news every day, and sometimes I'm just like, oh yeah, that story just kind of fell off the map. Anyway, the media resistance asked a few spy novelists to predict a more appealing future for the president. In the Times literary supplement, according to RT, the results revealed some shoddy writing work, even putting aside the predictable ending. Spoiler alert, Trump was colluding with the Russians all along. The story is typically left as fantasy garbage, violence, death, and permanently silencing those whom they disagree. If you're one of those people that you want tolerance, but you're not tolerant of anybody that has an opposing viewpoint, then you shouldn't call for tolerance. You should just realize that you're a fascist. So anyway, the New York Times actually put together this piece. Zoe Sharp wrote about this, fantasy that a lot of people on the left are living. That is, that if they can take over the House, the Congress, the Senate, they can get these impeachment proceedings going, which is, to me, just a total waste of time. I mean, it's desperate. If you can't convince people that the economy is not the only reason that you should vote, if you don't have an alternative to Donald Trump, and that's the problem, there's not one that's much better to Donald Trump. Okay, persistent war in the Middle East, persistent tensions over here, blah, blah, blah. I mean, other than making more concessions for international trade and, I don't know, living in the old NAFTA, living in the old ICC, living in the old, machinations of the UN and all of its quasi-global government stuff. You don't really have much of an option. Not that I like Donald Trump, but I mean, I could care less if they're spending millions upon billions of dollars chasing down all of the women that Donald Trump has wronged in the past. It's just, it's silly, and that's why the Democrats are a silly option. I think that's why you even have people like Kanye West, who I think a lot of black people and white people think he's crazy. Kanye West designs Blexit apparel, urging black people to leave the Democratic Party. Zero Hedge had the scoop on this. With black unemployment the lowest it's been since records began nearly 50 years ago, and black support for Donald Trump growing, what they say, up 36%. And this is a link to USA Today, versus 19% last year. It's almost a doubling. Trump-supporting rapper Kanye West has designed T-shirts urging blacks to leave the Democratic Party. In a Blexit, reports the New York Post's page 6. So anyway, regardless of what you think about Kanye West, he's definitely off the reservation, and he's also, and I've talked about him. I mean, I like a lot of the things that he says. Not a huge fan of his music. Not that it's bad or anything. I just, and I listen to a lot of hip hop and R&B type music, but it's a little commercial. It's a little, it's kind of irrelevant to my life. But, I applaud, no matter what, I applaud the fact that he's doing something that is so unpopular because black people, I think a lot of them, especially in the celebrity culture, have been so indoctrinated to be part of the faux left, which is the Democratic Party. I mean, it's not left. It's not an alternative in any form or fashion. Sarah Jessica Parker having Hillary Clinton over, and the Obamas, hanging out with, you name it, superstar, getting money from the aristocrats, using celebrity as a way to get investments into your party. I mean, let's not forget the Saudi Arabians bought Barack Obama's presidential library, but that's a whole nother story. My point being, not a lot of alternative. So it's not that I think that the left is any, or the right is, the answer, quite frankly. I just think the left is just, they're off in left field, and they're doing a lot of feel-good things that really aren't going to change the core issues of the system. Obviously, if you listen to the show for any amount of time, I think that fractional reserve banking, I think that the core institutions that are predatory and create debt in and of itself. I mean, just the fact that, people are born into this country, basically, when you're born, you have about $52,000 of debt owed to the U.S. government. That is your value. That is the amount of debt that you are responsible for just by setting foot on this soil. Those are real big systemic problems. The whole growth. It's not capitalism so much that it's just this kind of weaponized debt that is, to the point where we're paying, for every dollar that's created, 90 cents of that has to go back to paying off debt. That once you get past a certain threshold, those are real problems that nobody, except maybe somebody who's a radical like Ron Paul, will even talk about. At least Donald Trump is talking about the Federal Reserve, though they are just this, another quasi-governmental institution that just happens to buy all of our debt and issue money to us. But we don't know who owns it quite yet. And a lot of secrecy around that. I should mention Israel, under the cover of all the other insanity, forced the IDF forces launched 87 overnight airstrikes against the Gaza Strip. I know. And so there's been some rockets. And, of course, it's Iran's fault. It's all the Iranians. They're behind 9/11. Don't look at Jamal Khashoggi's work, where he really did highlight that the Wahhabists and the very well-connected people right to the current Saudi royals were intimately involved in 9/11. And they didn't get him killed. He's been talking about that for years. He might have had something more to say. All right, guys. Quick break. Back on the other side. We'll wrap up shop. Still time for you. 800-313-9443. It's Blacklisted Radio. All right, welcome back. It's Blacklisted Radio. Just noticed that we were getting a lot of hits on the website, and I was wondering what's hot, what's happening. And it's actually the story that we're going to bring to the show right here. Confirmed, NSA has top secret documents on Seth Rich. Cryptagon, Kevin runs the... Kevin runs the website Cryptagon.com. Probably one of my favorite websites, one of the few that I financially support. And that's, one of the things that we appreciate, people actually financially supporting the show, caring about it so much, trying to implore me to do more of them, that they actually support us or become Patreons. We have that option. There's a lot of different ways. And, by and large, I'm just happy if you listen to it and you share the show with others. If you rate us on iTunes or any of the other networks, YouTube, make comments. Getting feedback is so much more appreciated than the anonymous donation. Although cash is king, and I always appreciate that. So thank you for that. So anyway, Ty Clevenger put in a FOIA request to the NSA as described, and the people over at Cryptagon, Kevin primarily, who is the publisher, reached out to Ty, and he said yes, he did. Sic Semper Fi Tyrannis has a piece, Sic Semper Tyrannis. Now there's new information that may corroborate what the human sources quoted in the Farks article claimed about Seth's role in getting the DNC documents to WikiLeaks. Born from a FOIA request filed in November of 2016 by attorney Ty Clevenger, who requested any information regarding Seth Rich and Julian Assange. The NSA informed Clevenger in a letter dated October 4th, 2018. Your request has been processed under the provisions of the FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. 15 documents, 32 pages responsive to your request have been reviewed by this agency as required by the FOIA and have found to be currently and properly classified in accordance with Executive Order 13526. These documents meet the criteria for classification as set forth in, not that it matters, subparagraph C of Section 1.4. It remains classified top secret and secret. Pretty interesting. So a lot of documents from about Seth Rich, because the narrative obviously is that the Russians were working with Julian Assange. The Russian hackers were the ones that were the source and provided it, the Dancing Bear group and all the other hacker groups that have been pointed at. People at 4chan, and on. You can go on and on with Kim.com. There's a lot of people that may have been the leakers and that have talked about having this knowledge. And that's, a lot of hearsay. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much I believe Kim.com. All things considered, the, famous hacker that is fighting extradition and the U.S. government in its entirety in New Zealand. So it's pretty interesting. What would they have? And, of course, would this classification be, obvious, considering that the Russians had nothing to do with it? Then the obvious question is, why was Seth Rich murdered? And if you question that, if you talk about that, I mean, they'll go after your sponsors. They'll go after you. Just ask Sean Hannity just for mentioning it. And, of course, they'll put you alongside me, Doug Owen, with a tinfoil hat there at blacklistedраdio.com. If you dare get off of the reservation. That's what we try to do here on the show, and I hope you appreciate it. We appreciate you listening. Thank you so much for the time. I'll be back next week for another live edition of Blacklisted Radio. Until then, take care.